That is Joseph McCabe, from priest to freethinker. He was not born outside religion. He was born inside it. He did not begin as an enemy of faith. He began as its servant. As a boy in a poor Irish Catholic family in England, he was pointed toward the priesthood. One son for God, others for the world. He entered a monastery as a teenager. He wore the robe. He followed the rules. He prayed. He studied. He obeyed. From the outside it looked like certainty. From the inside it slowly became a struggle. This is not a fictional story. This is the real life of Joseph Martin McCabe, an English ex-Catholic priest, writer, and one of the most prolific freethinkers of the 20th century. This is his journey, from robe to reason, and the philosophy he built along the way. Section 1: Origins inside the Church. Joseph McCabe was born on the 12th of November 1867. In Macclesfield in Cheshire in England. His family was Irish Catholic. They later moved to Manchester, an industrial city of factories, poverty, and strong religious identity. In many Irish Catholic families at that time, one son was often expected to become a priest. McCabe, as the second son, was directed toward the church. Around the age of 15, he entered the Franciscan order. He began his training at Gordon Monastery in Manchester. He spent his novitiate year in Killarney in Ireland. After that he continued his studies at Forest Gate in Essex. He was serious and disciplined. He was not a casual believer. He was an excellent student of philosophy and theology. The church saw him as a promising young priest. Section 2: The intellectual priest. In 1890, at the age of 23, McCabe was ordained a Catholic priest. He took the religious name Father Antony. Soon the church sent him to the Catholic University of Louvain in Belgium. This was one of the main Catholic intellectual centers in Europe. There he studied philosophy and languages. He learned Hebrew. He attempted Syriac. He studied under respected Catholic scholars and philosophers. He was not just repeating prayers. He was working with theology, metaphysics, and church history at a high academic level. When he returned to England, he taught philosophy and ecclesiastical history. In 1895 he was placed in charge of a new Franciscan college in Buckingham. On paper his career was rising. Inside his mind his doubts were growing. Section 3: The slow collapse of faith. McCabe's faith did not collapse in one dramatic moment. It eroded slowly over several years. From his later writings and from biographies, we can see the main forces that pushed him away from belief. First, doctrinal confusion. He saw that many doctrines were extremely complex. They used subtle distinctions in technical language, but they did not rest on clear evidence. They looked like human constructions, built to defend a system, not like messages from a perfect mind. Second, historical problems. He studied the history of the church in detail. He saw power struggles, corruption, political deals, and human ambition inside institutions that claimed to be holy. The church said it was guided by God. Its history looked very human. Third, conflict with science. He saw how religious authorities had resisted new astronomy, new biology, new geology, and other sciences, not because the evidence was weak, but because the evidence threatened dogma. Fourth, authority versus truth. He noticed a pattern. When facts and doctrine clashed, it was usually the facts that were suppressed, not the doctrine. Books were banned, thinkers were condemned, questions were discouraged. Fifth, the psychology of belief. He realized that most people believe what they are taught as children. They inherit their religion from family and culture. Doubt is often punished, not welcomed. For McCabe, these were not small details. They were signs that something was deeply wrong. If a religion is true, why does it need so much protection? If truth is sacred, why is questioning treated as a threat? Section 4: Leaving the priesthood. By late 1895, McCabe's inner conflict had become intense. He could no longer preach what he did not believe. He could not stand in front of people and defend doctrines that his own mind had rejected. On Ash Wednesday in February 1896, he left the Franciscan order and the priesthood. He walked away from the life he had been trained for since his teenage years. He did not leave with money. He did not leave with a clear career plan. He left with a conscience that refused to lie. Soon after leaving, he He began to write about his experience. In 1897 he published a pamphlet called From Rome to Rationalism. He then expanded it into a book, 12 Years in a Monastery. These works told his story, and launched his public career. As a critic of Catholicism and religious dogma. Section 5 Entering the world of Freethought. After leaving the church, McCabe did not become neutral. He became active. From 1898 to 1899, he served as secretary of the Leicester Secular Society. In 1899, he became a founding board member of the Rationalist Press Association in Britain. The aim of this association was to spread rationalist and free thought literature to ordinary people at low cost. McCabe began to lecture widely. He wrote constantly. Over his lifetime, he produced around 200 to 250 books and pamphlets, plus many articles and encyclopedia entries. Many of his works were published as small cheap booklets by the American free thought publisher Emanuel Haldeman Julius. He gave many lectures, in Britain, in America, and elsewhere, on religion, science, history, and philosophy. He became a central figure in the rationalist and humanist movements. He was a regular lecturer at South Place Ethical Society in London. He was a leading figure in the Rationalist Press Association. He later served as vice president of the Ethical Union, a forerunner of modern humanist organizations. He was not just an ex-priest with a sad story. He was a professional freethinker who dedicated his life to public reasoning. Section 6 His core philosophy in clear points. If we compress Joseph McCabe's philosophy into a few simple principles, they look like this. Religion is a human product, not a divine revelation. No doctrine, no book, no institution should be protected from evidence and criticism. Science is our best method for understanding the natural world. Morality does not depend on religion. It can be grounded in human needs and human welfare. Critical thinking is not a luxury. It is a responsibility. Freedom of thought is essential for a truly human life. These principles match the themes of his books on religion, science, history, and rationalism. Section 7 Religion is a human product. McCabe argued that religions are created by human beings. Different cultures, different times, different places, produce different gods, different scriptures, different absolute truths. For him, this diversity was not a small curiosity. It was a key piece of evidence. If there were one universal self-evident revelation, why would geography decide your religion? If you are born in a Catholic family, you are told Catholicism is the one true faith. If you are born in a Hindu family, you are told something else. If you are born in a Muslim family, you are told another final truth. If you are born in a Buddhist family, you hear a different story again. McCabe's conclusion was simple. People do not discover gods. They inherit them. He saw religion as a mixture of human imagination, fear of death, social and political control, and historical accident. He did not say this to insult individual believers. He said it to expose the human mechanisms behind sacred language. Section 8 Faith and Evidence. McCabe challenged the idea that faith is automatically a virtue. If faith means accepting a claim without sufficient evidence, then for him, faith is not noble, it is dangerous. He believed that if a claim is true, it should be able to face questions. If a claim collapses under questions, it should not be believed. If a system punishes questions, it is protecting itself, not the truth. He did not say that every believer is dishonest. He said that the habit of believing without evidence weakens our respect for truth. He wanted people to feel responsible for what they believe, not only for what they do. Section 9 How Institutions Protect Dogma. McCabe paid close attention to the strategies used by religious institutions to protect their authority. He pointed to patterns like these. Children are taught not to question. Doubt is labeled as sin. Critics are called heretics, rebels, or enemies of God. Books are banned or discouraged. Alternative viewpoints are kept away from the faithful. Fear of hell, fear of social rejection, and fear of divine punishment are used to keep people obedient. He believed that if people were encouraged to compare religions, to study history, to read critics, and to test claims, dogma would become fragile. So instead, many institutions teach, obey, do not question, trust the authority, we speak for God. For McCabe, any institution that claims to speak for God becomes very hard to challenge. If you disagree, you are not just wrong. You are against God. This is how power hides behind the word sacred. Section 10 History as Evidence. McCabe used history as a tool against absolute religious claims. He wrote about religious wars, persecutions, inquisitions, censorship, and the long resistance to scientific discoveries. These events are part of recorded history. His point was simple: when an institution believes it holds absolute truth, it often feels justified in using force to protect that truth. People can torture, kill, or silence others, and still feel righteous, because they think they are defending the faith. McCabe wanted readers to see a pattern. When a belief is protected from criticism, it is usually because it cannot survive criticism. When a system fears questions, it is usually because questions are dangerous to its power. Section 11 Science and Dogma. McCabe did not treat science as a new religion. He defended science as a method. Science says, we have a hypothesis, we test it, and if the evidence goes against it, we change our view. Dogma says, we already have the truth, and if the evidence goes against it, we attack the evidence, or the person who brings it. For McCabe, the strength of science is not that it is always right, but that it is willing to admit when it is wrong. He saw this intellectual humility as a higher form of honesty than the rigid certainty of dogma. He wrote popular books on evolution, astronomy, and the history of science. He wanted ordinary readers to see that a naturalistic view of the world can be rich, meaningful, and intellectually honest. Section 12 Morality without religion. McCabe strongly rejected the idea that morality depends on religion. He argued that human beings were kind and cruel, generous and selfish, long before any particular religion existed. He believed that moral behavior can be explained by human needs and human nature, empathy, suffering, cooperation, and consequences. He asked a sharp question: if a person is good only because they fear punishment after death, or want a reward in heaven, is that real goodness, or is it a bargain? He believed that real ethics should be based on reducing suffering, increasing fairness, respecting autonomy, and protecting the vulnerable. He warned that when morality is tied to dogma, people can be led to support cruelty in the name of truth or obedience. History for him was full of examples: forced conversions, punishment for heresy, persecution of minorities, and suppression of women's rights, all done with a clear conscience. Because it was for God, McCabe supported women's rights, and worked alongside activists who fought for women's suffrage in Britain. Section 13 Critical thinking is self-respect. One of McCabe's most powerful ideas is that critical thinking is a form of self-respect. To think critically is to say, my mind is mine, my beliefs must earn their place. They cannot stay in my head just because they are old, popular, or comforting. He encouraged people to ask, why do I believe what I believe? Who taught me this? What evidence supports it? What evidence challenges it? What if I had been born in another country, another religion, another century? Would I still call this absolute truth? Or would I call it someone else's superstition? For McCabe, this kind of questioning does not destroy a person. It cleans the mind. It removes illusions that were never truly ours. It leaves behind only those beliefs that can survive honest examination. Section 14 His place in humanism and rationalism. Historically, McCabe became a central figure in the rationalist and humanist world. He was a leading figure in the Rationalist Press Association. He was a long-term lecturer at South Place Ethical Society in London. He served as vice president of the Ethical Union, which later evolved into modern humanist organizations. He wrote histories of civilization, critiques of the Church of Rome, analyses of the Bible and Christian doctrines, works on evolution and science, biographical dictionaries of rationalists, and large reference works. He was sometimes described as a trained athlete of disbelief, disciplined, relentless, and unafraid of controversy. He had conflicts even with fellow rationalists. He could be sharp and uncompromising, but his intellectual energy and productivity were undeniable. Section 15 Essence of his philosophy. If we boil Joseph McCabe's philosophy down to a few core principles, they are these. Do not accept any claim without sufficient evidence. No book, no institution, and no tradition is above criticism. Religion is a human construction and must be studied as such. Science and reason are our best tools for understanding reality. Morality should be grounded in human welfare, not in dogma. Freedom of thought is essential for a truly human life. Critical thinking is not optional, it is a responsibility. Section 16 Closing. Walking out of mental prisons. Joseph McCabe's story is not just about leaving a monastery, it is about leaving mental prisons. He began as a loyal priest, trained to defend the church. He ended as a relentless freethinker, trained to defend reason. He did not ask people to hate believers. He asked them to stop surrendering their judgment. His life sends a simple message. Do not let your mind be ruled by untested claims. For anyone today who feels the tension between inherited belief and honest questions, Joseph McCabe's journey is a reminder. You are allowed to ask. You are allowed to doubt. You are allowed to change your mind. And when you do, your life and your beliefs become more truly your own.